Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete from Anxiety here. Welcome to today's episode. I appreciate y'all being here so much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing. Pause this video. Go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get in today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today.
Guys, welcome to an exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. I have a very special guest today. My guest deeply understands the power of human connection and vulnerability, a truth illuminated during their challenge period involving the loss of their mom and leaving a narcissistic relationship. Please welcome the host of Can I Say, and also the Healthy Love with Nick and Nick, the one, the only, Nikki La Croce. Did I say it right on your last name?
It's La Croce, but you were
Oh,
closer than
I
most. You were
tried.
closer than most. You were closer than most. Honestly, I grew up apparently rejecting calls from telemarketers if they didn't know how to say our last name, because I didn't understand that they were just saying it wrong. So my parents probably benefit from that.
Right? Like, you don't know how to say my last name? Click.
Yeah, 100%. Well,
So,
thanks
Nikki,
for having me on.
definitely. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, where to begin? I would say part of what really interested me in joining your show, and I'm so glad that you reached out, is that I have learned over the years just how mission critical it is to pay attention to your mental health. As you mentioned, I was in a relationship with a narcissist that was for over 10 years. And the thing that was really challenging for me is that in the sort of spectrum of people who deal with narcissism, it's, some people are very obvious about it and some are more subtle and insidious. And I was dealing with somebody who was the latter. And so I didn't really even understand how much that relationship was negatively impacting my mental health. I had my own toxic patterns that I was replaying that then sort of perpetuated all of that. And when I started going to therapy, it just really shifted my perspective on a lot. I started going because I was miserable at my job, and then uncovered, oh my gosh, look, it's Pandora's box of all these issues that I hadn't even considered confronting. And so for me to be able to share my story and speak to other people like yourself who really value those conversations around mental health, want to break the stigma, it just really means a lot to me, and it resonates a lot with me. And I think there's many people out there who are looking for people like yourself and myself to say, like, here, sit down, let's have a conversation about it. Let's create a space where it's not only okay to talk about this, but it's encouraged.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I think a conversation versus an actual interview is a lot better because you'll get more answers that are genuine than anything else. I feel I dealt with a narcissist for 15 years, so I'm right there with you. So
Oof,
I was like,
it's
ugh,
a rough go, and I think what's hard too is if you're telling me that you dealt with that for 15 years and you were just telling me about your wife now, right? This is something that we were dealing with before any real information about narcissism, gaslighting. Like, the term
hmm
gaslighting wasn't even a thing people used when I was in it for most of it. So thankfully there's a lot of resources now, and people have the option and the opportunity to learn about different types of relationships and the people who have different mental health issues and how that can affect you. But when I was in it, I put a lot of that pressure on me, and it was facing inward. And listen, I'm a flawed human being. I can admit where I went wrong in certain ways, but I also didn't even really understand the extent to which I was being manipulated, because it wasn't a mainstream discussion like it is now. I do think a lot of people right now do have a little bit of a tendency to be like, everybody's a narcissist, and I also don't think that's true.
yeah, yes, I agree with you 100% on that one.
Yeah, like, I think people can have narcissistic tendencies. I think people can be manipulative and not necessarily be a diagnosable narcissist. And I'm not a professional in that regard, so I
Yeah,
I can't say, but what I can tell you is that I think for you to understand what how you can show up best in a relationship, sometimes that requires us to go through situations where, like, we are challenged about who we are and how we think about things. And while I certainly wouldn't prefer to relive all that I went through, I do know that it shaped my perspective around mental health, and it was a forcing function to make me focus on that more. And I'm in the best relationship I've ever had now, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And considering like the current circumstances in the world, I'd say that's like a pretty big win.
Exactly. And it's the same thing for me too. All that time I spent, and now I'm married now. My wife now, it's a whole different thing. It's so much different. We actually talk about things, have actual real conversations. And she forces me to really deal with a lot of the things I didn't realize that I had habit wise. But my narcissist, she was covert though. She's told
Same.
everybody I was so great, da, da, da. And then she would do those things to trigger you and then go, look, see, look, he's crazy. That's why I'm leaving, because that's, and all those kind of things. And it's so funny when you hear other people say it, because you're like, damn, at least now I know I'm not alone in these situations, and me and another person on my Monday show, my weekly one, we actually had that conversation. There were a few people that told me during that conversation, they're like, I had to stop halfway through because it was hitting home so hard. It's like, well, that's the whole point. That's what we wanted. We wanted to
Yeah.
hit you like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a really good point too, Pete, because I think that when you have other people who are willing to share their stories, there is comfort in that. And it's important, right? It's important for us to be able to, um, even just what you were saying about how your relationship with your wife is. I was just talking to someone else on a podcast yesterday, and the conversation was about how in our relationships, whether those are romantic or otherwise, people hold a mirror up to us, and when you're in a good, healthy relationship, it's an opportunity to pause and reflect and consider. When you're in a state of hypervigilance, which is the case when you're with a narcissist, you're like constantly on high alert. And
Hmm.
I was dealing with a covert narcissist as well. I was also dealing with basically somebody who was living a double life, dealing with substance abuse. And there were a lot of angles that were sort of unbeknownst to me, and I was naive to them. And that made it increasingly more challenging to pause and reflect and think about everything that was going on with me, because there was too much chaos surrounding me, which in retrospect, I do think some of that is by design, because like the more you're sort of paying attention to like what the left hand is doing, you can't look at what the right hand is doing.
Yeah,
Right. So
exactly.
I think one of the greatest things for me and coming out of that relationship was, well, a couple of things. There's many positives, mostly positives, I would say, but was that I had the opportunity to just finally like settle for a second and like really evaluate myself, my life. Where was I? How did I get to a point where I was in this relationship? How did I get to a point where I was willing to accept that relationship? And why wouldn't I leave? And I think a lot of people ask the question, why didn't you leave sooner? For anybody listening who isn't aware, statistically speaking, last I looked, this was a couple of years ago if the data's changed, but it takes 7 like attempts times to leave to actually get out of an abusive relationship. And it's not for lack of desire or lack of trying. It's just that like there's so much psychological damage, and there's also in some cases physical threats. And so you have to be really mindful of like how you're going about that process. And so it can look a lot easier to somebody on the outside than it is for you on the inside, even if you're like desperate to get out.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And then I had kids involved in my situation. So, of course, now we're weaponizing the children, because it's like, well, you can't see the kids, or I'm taking the kids. And we and her split up, I actually went to work, and then she came to work, had cleared the whole house, and I had no idea this had happened. So I come home eventually, because when I get ready to leave, my car is missing. She stole my car, took
Oh my
my
gosh.
money, and then took all the stuff out of my house, and then took the kids with her too, and said, "Oh, I'm staying with my friend or whatever." And I was like, "What?" I was like, it was so surreal, but it's what I needed though, because that way I woke up to like, hey man, you don't need to settle for this anymore.
Well,
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
That-
I totally get that moment. Mine was after several things that should have been the line. Like quite honestly, there were like very clearly many lines crossed, and it was like, was that the line
yeah,
I should have done something about? What about that one? But like the full blown breaking point for me was there had been like multiple car accidents that were inexplicable. There was, as I mentioned, substance abuse. There were
yeah,
too many random details to get into at this point, honestly. And there's so much that I always, when I'm trying to explain to people on a show, I'm like, which point do I start with and where do I go? Because like the complexity of it, it's like you don't need the whole story. But the one that was the tipping point was because there had been multiple car accidents that were inexplicable. I put a dash cam in my car because I'm like, I'm worried that like I don't understand what keeps happening. And so this was not like a tracking mechanism. This was, I just want to make sure that if something happens, I understand what caused the accident. And I saw a video of facing outward. So there's no inward camera, but I was able to deduce that the person I was in the relationship with at the time, I was married to them. She drove to a homeless encampment, picked up a homeless person, and did heroin in my car while a police
What?
car drove by. And like, I, and then denied it. And then I cared for her as she was very clearly withdrawing from something, and had it all spun around on me that like in some way I was the abusive one by the end of it. And I was like, I just, there's only so much that you can rationalize to yourself with immense cognitive dissonance. And then there is the point where somebody does what the person you were married to did. Somebody does what the person I was married to did. And you're like, at what point, like, am I like really just kidding myself? Because the denialism is helping no one.
Right. No, you're right though, because I didn't see everything around me. I was so blinded.
Oh yeah.
She was causing so much problems for me. Like I was losing friends left and right. Her friends weren't talking to her, and it got interesting because I started noticing these things little by little. But every time I say something, she go, "Oh no, you're making it up, or you're crazy." Make me think that I'm the one that's losing my mind.
Oh my God, I
To the
got
point.
goosebumps about it because it's so relatable. I'm
You know
sorry to
what I'm
cut you
saying?
off. It's just
No,
so
you're good. Go ahead.
real. It's so
No,
real. It's
no,
like
you're 100% correct to do so. Trust me, I agree.
your body just your body gets so used to the chaos. And like there were things where I remember calling her out on it, and then the gaslighting happens and you're like very sure that you know what you know. And so you're like, "No, I'm insistent on this." I'm not even
Hmm.
necessarily trying to get mad about it. I'm just like, "Tell me, like, there's just no functional way this makes sense." And it really does. It twists your brain into knots, and the mental gymnastics you'll do to justify a narcissist's behavior while everyone around you is like, "Wake up. Do you see
Hmm.
it yet? How
Yes,
about
yes.
now?" And, I'm curious for you, Pete, was this something that like you kind of felt from the beginning? Because for me, I think I knew something was off, but I was also very, very insecure, and I had idealized the relationship I wanted, and the person I was with. She was a behavior, which was really messed up. She was a behavioral specialist for children with
Oh,
autism.
okay.
So
What's your
she like knew a lot about psychology and knew how to manipulate. And so for me, I saw that like career as something that was altruistic. And then I formed my entire opinion of her as a person around this like one sort of good component, and everything else that could have clued me into the fact that we weren't compatible. I was like, no. That's like, no, I want to be in a relationship with this person who is like this. And it's like, all these other things are things you don't want. So, like, for
Yeah.
you, do you feel like you sort of had an inkling from the start and you accepted it?
You No, not really, because I started talking to a close friend of mine, and I told him about it. And he's actually the one that started pointing it out to me because I was on the right track, but I just for some reason, I didn't want to believe it. And he was like, "Hey, man, wake the hell up and realize what you're telling me. These are the facts you're listing." He's like, "Does this not sound a little strange to you? These just subtle little things they would do would make no sense to everybody else. But to me, it's like, yeah, this is a little out of the place. Like, why is this happening?" And he's like, "Dude, are you not getting this? Like, come on, you can't be that fucking dense," is what he told me too.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
what I needed. I needed him. He kept telling me, and I've had several friends that tried to basically help me through the whole thing. Like I have a couple people that came and stayed with me, tried to help me. One friend, he literally almost went crazy trying to help us because she got in there and just started causing so much drama between me and him. We almost had a fist fight between the two of us because of her. And like everybody was trying to help me. And like I didn't see it for myself because I was so blind, because like I was trying to tell myself, no, she wouldn't do that. I can trust her.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. I kept lying to myself, saying, "Oh, I can trust you." Even though I'm watching her lie to
Oh.
everybody around me,
Mm.
you know?
You make a really interesting point about that, the lying to yourself. I think that has been one of the greatest parts of the journey for me in terms of where I needed to recognize my own accountability and allow myself to grow from that. I feel like it's very easy when you're in an abusive relationship to be like, that person's clearly abusive. And I think it's hard at least for me, it is. Little less so now, but it's still difficult to say like I was in an abusive relationship. I
Yeah.
was abused. Like that's it. It like gives me such a gross feeling. But it's the truth. And at the same time, there's also accountability for the people who have been victimized. And that's not to say like I'm not victim blaming or shaming, period, full stop. Like that's not the point. It's more to say that, like you, I lied to myself constantly. I would self abandon nonstop to like justify the other person's actions instead of listening to like what I knew to be true. And my
Right.
therapist said to me when I left, one of the hardest things and most important things that you're going to need to do when you leave a narcissist is to like reclaim your sense of self.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's so true because you don't even realize how much you have whittled yourself down when you're in it, because to your point, it's gradual. It's a very slow burn if they're good at it. And when that happens, I think that you don't even realize where you started to compromise yourself. And so for me, a lot of it was peeling back the layers going, okay, at the end, what I told you, that was really messed up. There were several things that were sort of like that. And it was like, okay, it got increasingly worse. And then after that experience that I described to you with this homeless encampment and I mean, I left. This was still like peak COVID, no vaccines. So, like I flew. I was back to the East Coast to be with my family because I was like, I can't. Like, this isn't okay. I need to get out. And then while I was on that trip, my mom passed away really suddenly. And then I had this moment where I was like, I want this person, my partner at the time, quote unquote partner, not actually a partner, to be there. And so I was like seeking support, like had her come. My family was super pissed at me. She was creating
Yep.
division between me and my best friend, me and my
Yep.
family. My mom had just died. Like, oh my God. And it was always about her. And then when I got back from that trip a couple months later, she basically, I told her, I was like, you're going to need to move out. Like, this is done. I already told her. And she's like, what, you don't want to try to be separated? I was like, what
Yep.
were the last several months? Like, that's it. We're done. And I had to go in so stoic and sure, because every other time I had tried to get a foot out the door, something more traumatic would happen. And so I started seeing that, like, having this recognition, especially because I was in therapy and I didn't really tell many of the people in my life all the details of what was going on. I was
Yeah.
insecure about
Yeah.
it. I felt ashamed of it. I felt ashamed that I was accepting it, which should be like clue number one that you don't want to be in that relationship. But then realizing that the pattern that my therapist pointed out to me was, do you understand that like every time that you sort of get wiser and decide that you're going to go, that now something more traumatic happens, and not just more traumatic for her, but it's like placing trauma on you because of situations I was being put in. And once I sort of saw that, I was like, oh my God, I can't unsee it. The toothpaste out of the tube. And when I got back after losing my mom, told her I wanted the divorce, went out for a couple of hours. I have this video where I was like feeling really free. I was just sort of like, yes, like I'm in a good place. I come back. And then there's like a lot of details in between. And I'm just going to summarize basically what happened. I saw her phone. She was texting somebody very clearly about getting drugs. My address was in that text message. And I was like, no, who is this? And she chased me out of the house. She had been in the shower. She chased me out of the house in a towel, pinned me to the ground to get her phone from me, telling me it was her lawyer because we're getting divorced. I'm like, okay, that's very clearly not what's happening here. But
Right.
she was so committed to the lie that I like wasn't even scared, even though I was in like a very dangerous situation. Like, I mean, she really had me compromised. And I was like, this is insane. And I think it was just this moment where I like, it's weird because I don't get a lot of flashbacks about like this stuff in particular, but I remember very vividly the feeling of being on the ground, having her like sort of pushing down on me and looking at me really square in the eye, like with like a little bit of, it was sinister. It was like, you know what you're doing, even if you like anything that I've forgiven you before, like there's no coming back from it now. Right.
Yeah.
And to get the phone out of my hand, she bit me. And I'm like, this is savage, savage. And I think like it's weird for me to talk about in the sense that like you said it was surreal
Mhm.
when your ex like cleared the house and did all of that. It was one of those moments for me where I was like, I can't even believe this is happening. And then she gets the phone, runs inside, calls somebody and tells them immediately that I was the one that attacked her. So she's
Oh,
already
yeah.
running her backstory. And I'm like, no, like this isn't what's happening. And so it's really, I think, and again, this is extreme. I don't think this is what everybody deals with, but I'd like to, it's interesting that we're having this conversation today
Yeah. No, I agree.
because I actually was just thinking today how I think I grew up feeling like I lived like a really normal, safe life. And there were moments, where you're like, life's lifing and it feels crazy and emotional and things like that. But like, I was like a safe suburban, like middle class kid, and to have my life spiral out like this was also like in terms of the reflection and people being like, what's going on with you? Like, we were different quality of people. We were different level of like what we wanted out of life. And one of my friends, similar to like how yours were, was like, you're asking for the bare minimum and you're not even getting that. And that was
Exactly.
a moment for me. And then the other one was flat out so simple. And I invite anybody who's listening who is in a relationship where you're like, I don't know, but I can justify it if I want to. One of my closest, my oldest friend said to me, I have to take the risk that you're potentially not going to want to talk to me after this, but I need to ask you and I need to tell you what I'm thinking. So she shared a little bit about how she was feeling with me and how I was getting slighted and things. And then she goes, so I just like want to ask you, are you happy?
Mm-hmm.
And how much will you avoid that question if you're not? You
Exactly.
know, if you are, you don't have to, you don't, that's an easy question to answer. Even if you're like unhappy in moments, generally speaking, are you happy? If the answer is no, if you are not happy, why? Why are you staying? How does that serve you? How does that help anybody? And I think, it's different when you have kids. So maybe you have thoughts on that too, because I know that
Yeah.
that adds a layer of complexity that I didn't have.
It adds a whole low level because now they weaponize them against you. Oh, well, this, why are you doing this in front of your kids? You see what you're doing in front of them? And it's them that are enraging you to get you to do these things. So you look like this in front of the kids, and before people say kids understand it's always for they can tell a lot of things.
Yeah.
They made up to say nothing, but they're seeing what you're doing. They're watching these things happen. So let's clear that out the window right now.
And their
So they
bodies know, right? Like, their bodies,
Mhm.
like, they can sense the energy, so, like, there's also that. Sorry to interject.
No, you're good. It's a great point though. And another thing too, I found out the other day. I was talking to a psychologist from British Columbia. She said that when you yell with kids too, it's very harmful to them too. So try not to yell around them as well. Well, that didn't happen in this, and I did some horrible things that I've already admitted to. I was drinking a lot. I was working nights, so I wasn't sleeping because I was taking care of the kids. And then when I took another job, I was working like 50 plus hours a week. I'd still get yelled. She constantly get me going and make me enraged. And for the kids, I'd look like I'm just angry all the time because mom just starts saying these things to aggravate me and then go, oh, look, he's doing this, he's doing that. That way she could make her story believable, which still
Mhm.
wasn't because a lot of her close friends weren't talking to her. That's what the other sign was too. Like some weird things started happening. Like her friends stopped talking to her. And I was like, hey, what happened to your one friend? I'm not talking like they were like sisters, like real close. And then all of a sudden she just fell off. And I said, what happened to your friend? We were supposed to go check out her new house when it get built. Well, I don't know. She's not answering me. One of my close friends that I was working with and her were hanging out. Later do I find out a very interesting story comes with that is that she wouldn't answer the door every time I go and knock because she was with me. Well, it turns out that what I didn't know, and I found out after we broke up and a bunch down the road, is that she had the friend's sister's baby shower was hitting on the husband. Oh yeah, oh yeah, it gets better too because the other friend apparently knew that she was being unfaithful, and she was trying to justify it to them. And she said, "Listen, I don't agree what you're doing to him." I said, "He's at home taking care of your kids, all these things." And I was listing all these points of things that were going on. And she's like, "If you continue this behavior, I'm no longer going to be a part of this." And I found this out from the husband down the road too. And I was just like, it just kept getting more interesting by the minute of things. And I'm like, just to hear all that, after I felt so crazy to the point I started hearing voices in the back of my head that were telling me to commit suicide because it's like, you're
Mm.
not because you're questioning your sanity at this point. She's got me
Yeah.
so twisted. I have no idea what's reality and what's not. And I was smoking a lot of marijuana at the time. I was
Yeah.
drinking and all that stuff probably wasn't a great idea, but that was her way of controlling me though, because she kept me in a constant state of control. So she kept like painting these pictures of, oh no, you're crazy. Don't, no. You're not seeing that thing like that's not what it is. But then all these stories come out and it felt so great and empowering because it was like, well, damn, now I don't feel so crazy because I was right the whole time. She was doing
Yeah.
something. But I'm like, God damn it, y'all could have told me these things.
Yeah. Well, but you know what's okay. So two things on this. One, is that have you heard the term reactive abuse? Because this was something that was
No.
sort of new to me in the last like maybe year or so. I don't really I think it's a little bit of an unfair misnomer because it makes it seem as if like there's sort of intentionality. I think abuse is something that we do typically intentionally, right? Whereas but the premise of reactive abuse is basically when somebody like a narcissist gaslights you so much that you now are volatile, you are reacting to their abuse with reactive abuse. And it's like, I don't think it's fair. I think that there's probably a better way you could coin that because I don't like that to me sort of that unfairly. I'm not saying like because I had explosive reactions about things too. So and I can own that. But I think when like you're in a sustained abusive relationship and you also don't really understand that you are, and so you're starting to feel like you said, like, I'm crazy. Like none of this is getting justified to me. It doesn't make any sense. Then like it builds up in you energetically and you lash out because you're like, make it make sense to me. Make it make sense to me. And we had a couples therapist who was highly unethical in retrospect for sure. We started seeing her as a couples therapist. Then she saw my ex for like EMDR, and then I saw her for EMDR because of a situation that unfolded with my ex. And then by the end of it, after this abuse happened with her, this therapist who knew what I was going through wrote a letter of recognizance to get my ex out of jail after she got arrested for assaulting me. And I'm like, cool. Citing me as the abuser, a therapist. So like, so that's like a really good example of kind of what you were saying with like triangulation, basically sort of like they pinpoint the person that they're going to weaponize. Right. And then you are on the other side of it. So there's that. And my ex would always be like very calm. And then I would look explosive by comparison. And there you go. So reactive abuse is a term that I think people should know. I think we should maybe rename it. But the premise, at least, is like, you're not crazy. Okay. You're not crazy. Somebody gaslighting you is like an irritant that just keeps coming back and back and back until it wears you so thin that like you can't help however you're going to respond. And that's not an excuse for like raging either. Like again, I've done a lot of work to deal with my anger. So I there is onus on us for that. The other piece of it, I think that's really important to talk about is how when you are in these situations, you know, the way that people operate is to constantly kind of keep you thinking about, you know, what you've done rather than what they're doing. And because they're sort of repositioning it so anything that you call them out for, they're turning around and flipping on you somehow. And it's very difficult to like have a sense of stability and conviction in what you're doing when the other person just straight up won't let you have it. Like I feel like every issue I ever had basically went unresolved because I had to acquiesce. And I was like, fine, I'm just dropping it now. And when you mentioned like your ex kind of emptying the house, taking the money, I mean, lots of money stolen. And then like the worst part is like you're going through a divorce and then you have to pay them more money after you're like, they've stolen a ton of money from me. And the courts are like, well, that doesn't really matter. Give them more. And you're like, justice.
Right. Mine always, well, because we're in Texas, so you know that weird common law thing. She never wanted to admit that we were together, but she didn't realize that the rules are a little different. When we moved into the last house before we split up, she referred to me as her husband. I referred to her as my wife. So right there, we were locked into that. So she'll try and deny it because she'll be like, "Oh no, this and that," you know. And then when she disappeared after we had separated, she took the kids. I was living in a hotel. What was like weekly rentals, had the little suites and stuff like that. You know, she kept dropping the kids off too, which is weird because it's like you just took them away. Now you're trying to get me fired because you keep dropping off. And luckily, I had a boss who was so cool about everything, understood the situation. And mind you, this girl is younger than I am, and she is so well beyond her knowledge of everything. Was really understanding, you know. And it was weird because she would just drop them off all the time, and then it was just like, well, you wanted him so bad, but now you don't because now you want to go hang out with this other guy. And I know you are because your friend is telling me that you leave in the middle of the night to go see this person, leave the kids there and lock them in a room,
Oh
essentially when
my
they're
God.
sleeping. Oh yeah, it got weird. And so
So can I ask you a question? How long ago was this for you?
what is it now? About 5 years. About 5 or 6 years now. It
No,
took me a
we're
while.
kind of on the same timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of took me a while to afterwards to even start even consider dating because I had the girls and I was taking care of all three of them on my own and things like that. And mom would just
3
kind of
kids,
diss me.
wow, like, I mean, I give you a lot of credit, Pete, sorry to interject again,
No.
I'm prone to this, partially my ADHD, so, like, forgive me for that, and also the other bit is where I just, like, I'm inclined to be like, "God, I really admire somebody who, like, will commit to." I mean, as a parent, I would hope most people would commit to their children in that way, but I really respect, doing that, not just amidst, like, the complexities of the relationship and the work, but
Hmm.
because, there is so much self-care that's needed when you're recovering from that, and I imagine that's really so much more difficult when you now are highly prioritizing, the
Oh yeah,
needs of your children.
it gets worse though because I was still a toxic person myself because I'm dealing with her constant attacks, and then she's talking to the kids, and like you can't say no to the kids to talk to mom. So this is where it
Yeah,
started getting interesting. She was manipulating them to make it seem like it was horrible to live with me. So eventually they went back to live with her. But the premise was that she got to the oldest one first and started like trying to play with her, manipulate the poor
yeah,
girl, promising all these flashy gifts and all these great things, because I was not the type of person just to buy them all this fancy stuff. Like, no, if you want this, you got to earn it. I'm paying, all the rent for this. I'm making sure you guys have everything you need for school and all these other things like that. And then mom had bought them iPads. So that was her way in because she's like,
yeah,
well, now I'm thinking I can get to them this way. I can call them and take each one and manipulate each one very individually. So the first one, the oldest one, would start telling people she was thinking about killing herself. So, like, I hope when you're saying these things that these are very serious statements you're making. So, we had to have the police come to my house when she had a freak out session one time, talking about, oh, my mom said that it'd be better living with her and all these other things. That's when it caught me that okay, that's what she was planning. That she bought these iPads so she can get to them because the oldest one had a cell phone, obviously, because she's old enough. She had friends and things like that. I was like, okay, I didn't want him not to be able to talk to her, but at the same time, like, what do you do in that situation?
yeah. Yeah, that's a lot more complicated. I have a friend who has 3 children as well, and her first husband was somebody who, like, 100% played the kids as pawns, and
Hmm.
it was really scary as a friend to witness that level of manipulation and knowing because single mom, 3 kids, pretty young, runs her own business. It was, this was also sort of happening like during COVID with shutdowns, and she's a hairstylist. So there's like all of these other added
Yeah,
layers of complexity. I almost feel like if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, one of the telltale signs, and it's going to vary in how it happens for you because like everybody's different and the relationships are different. But if you like pause for a second and you look around and you're like, would this be my life if this person wasn't in it? And you're looking at it because you're like, this is weird, it's gross, I'm unhappy, whatever it is. And you're like, if that person weren't here, would this chaos be swirling around me? And if that answer is no, then like bye. Just like tab out now, get out while you can, because
exactly.
it's not worth the amount of stress that goes into it. I mean, even now with the relationships that we have, because we were speaking about this a little before we started, right? Is that when you have safety in a relationship, your nervous system knows that.
Yeah.
When you have safety in a relationship, you can actually breathe. Like I literally, and I wonder if you felt this at all, because like my body was so tense and
Hmm.
stressed all the time. And so I was at the time, because this is like 5 years ago now. I think I was like at 34 or 35. And I had said to one of my friends, and maybe even my family, that I was like, I feel like my chest is clenched so tight, so
Hmm.
tight. I was like, I'm really worried I'm going to have a heart attack before I'm
Yeah.
35. So I'm 34. And I was like, I'm really actually worried about it. Not an exaggeration. I could feel my body being so tense that it was just unfathomable that I wasn't going to have some sort of health issues. And then I lost my mom, which was extremely tragic and challenging. And then I'm trying to go through a divorce with somebody who like is making it increasingly
Right.
difficult by the
Yeah.
second, will not give up, will not stop lying. And so I just have to, as with all the other arguments, cave and be like, fine, take the money, get out of my life. But when she was finally gone, the last final sort of thing for me after the payout, after like the restraining order, which was apparently necessary now, I gave a victim impact statement. And I felt like my body was just like,
Right.
okay, okay, like we can breathe now, we can like release it. And it doesn't fully go away because those things are very real and they happened. But I feel like it was finally this sense of, oh, I get to be in control of my life again.
Yeah, did you also get the sense of feeling too when it was all over? Every time that person would come around, you just get high tense, like you get really start getting you're stressing out and things. And like it was weird because when we moved to where I'm now, I took the kids and we moved to where my parents were because they were like, "Hey, listen, we'll help you get restarted and everything." And I'm talking like I had to do everything: buy another car, do
Yeah.
find a whole new job, take other jobs that I just took whatever I could find at the time, whatever paid the bills didn't matter. But every time she came around, like I had an episode one time I was talking to a friend on Snapchat and she's like, "Dude, what's wrong with you?" After she'd left the room, she came in the room, was asking me a question about something, and I was just like answering her, but I didn't notice what was going on. But my friend was watching. She was like, "Dude, are you okay?" She said, "Because you went autopilot for like 5, 10 minutes while she's standing in the room with you, and she's like, I watched you and you're just I don't remember what I was doing at the time. I was moving something around. She's like, you just kept moving stuff around and kept mumbling things to yourself. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. To me, it was a whole conversation I was having with her,
Yeah.
and the friend was just waiting because she came in to ask me something. But the friend had seen it from a different perspective. And she was like, but it was every time she came around, man, I just didn't like it. I didn't like her being around me. And my anxiety would kick up and everything
Yeah.
else. And I get real stressed. I started having that feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack, and I literally have to like lay down because I'm like I'm ready to just start dropping because I don't.
Yeah.
She comes in the room and causes that much because it's like all she would say was hello to me and that's it. And that's it. The hello, man, the sound of the voice was just enough to send me into a complete panic mode.
Well, it's interesting. So I actually once after the physical assault happened, there really wasn't communication. Legally speaking, there couldn't be. I had to file a restraining order. She was still technically living at the house, and I needed her to not be. I had that night that I described, I told her I was going to call the police. She basically made the case for why I shouldn't, and I just needed her to get out of the house. And I was like, fine, I'm not going to call the police tonight. I did call them the next day because I'd actually been sitting on the board for a nonprofit for survivors of domestic abuse because she had told me that she had been in an abusive relationship
Oh,
previously. So
okay.
then, like, as an advocate and an ally, I was part of this group, and then not realizing that I'm one of the people who's also impacted by this. So that was a moment of interesting reflection for me. And so when I was living in Washington State at the time, they they file the domestic abuse charges. You don't have to, the state will.
Yeah.
And so I went through court proceedings with her there, but like she just literally lied about everything. And it was challenging because I was so hyper vigilant and I was like, I want justice. I want to change the system for people. But to your point, it's like very, very exhausting. And one of the things that like as I keep mentioning, sort of the calmness in the nervous system is like I understand the somatic experience that comes with the stress of PTSD. And then when you're in like prolonged experiences of exposure to trauma and things like that, which we were, then, there's complexities to that. And to be able to rest and give yourself freedom from it is super important. So I actually feel like having to get the restraining order, despite the fact that the entire situation was like royally screwed. I mean, it was like less than 24 hours after getting home when my mom passed away that this all unfolded fully. And so I was like, you know, as hard as it was in a way to like not really have any more like specific closure where I could like speak face to face and get like what I needed there. Because she didn't even show her face on the virtual Zoom meeting when I gave my victim impact statement, which is par for the course. And I made that point as well. But I was basically just like, you know what? It needs to be this way because every other time I wanted to leave, she came back around and I just like I couldn't let it go. And so I've said, if the universe was like, it has to be this way because that's the only way you're going to fully get out, then like let that be. And to be honest with you, I think that really helped me. I can't imagine what it would be like to have children with this person and have to have like the ongoing
Oh,
engagement with them.
yeah, it's an ongoing assault though. Think about it, because like
Yeah.
every text message is another attack, and like, and
Yeah.
then I slowly
I
started
witnessed that
learning.
with my Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I witnessed that with my friend. So like I can't understand personally, but I've absolutely been
Yeah, yeah,
privy
but
to it.
you witnessed it, so you have an idea how it went, though. But it was like constant attacks, and it's like now it's still the same thing too. It's constant text messages of, oh, they don't want to, they want nothing to do with you. Da, 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 you know, all these things to try and get you to trigger back and start fiercely texting back. So to piss her off, I basically just go one word answers, or there are like a couple words, and I go, and then I can't, don't give her anything, and she gets so mad, she'll just start fiercely texting all these paragraphs saying all this stuff. Well, I got all these letters I want to send you. Where should I send them to? The address, my address hasn't changed. It's the same thing. My email address is the same thing. I don't tell her any of this though. I just let her just continue to send these wacky messages.
How does it
And
feel for you now? Like, do you feel like you're a little bit removed from it now that you're in a different place?
now that I look at it from the outside looking in, it's like it's so much it's fun. I laugh at it because when she starts doing it, I start identifying what she's attempting to do because you can see her trying to get me riled up and start attacking me. And I don't let it get to me. I sit there and analyze what she's saying to me. So I start thinking about what I'm going to say next. So like I'll start thinking some big paragraph I want to say, but I'll just type like 3 words to her and it doesn't give her anything. And she'll just keep poking at it, and it feels good now to know that she doesn't have control like that because now I know
Yeah.
what's going on and I can identify these things as it's happening because she weaponizes the kids all the time. She still does, and it still happens all the time, and she'll send me all these random messages and things like that. And then I'll get like weird letters in the mail because technically according to the court said I'm still technically their legal guardian, and because she went to court and tried to lie to them and then got caught. So then she blames me for that. I'm like, you're the one that lied to him. What do you mean? You got caught. Don't blame me for that.
Yeah, it's the audacity too. I think like for me, because it is so traumatic, like I it's hard to like kind of have a smile on my face as I'm saying this, but there is this like bit of like is comical the right word? I can laugh about it.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that it's like you're relentless. You are so committed to the lie. You are so willing to just like completely shirk all accountability. Like it's just impossible for you. And I think there is this part of me because I've done so much work and there's always work to be done. So I'm by no means perfect, but where I can look at it and be like, I feel sorry for you. I feel
yeah,
sorry for you that this is how you're choosing to live your life. And, as hard as it was to go through, as difficult as it can be on some days when I reflect on how horrible it truly was, that hurts. But then I think, God, I'm in a good place. I'm in a much better place than you are. So like, and it by no means is it a comparison game either. Like it's irrelevant to me at this point, especially because
yeah,
I don't have to have the ongoing ties. But like I think that it's when you can, like you're saying, when you can see it more objectively and you're not in the thick of it and you have the opportunity to sort of say, okay, what role do I play in this? And you know that you can control your response. You can adapt how you're reacting to things and they don't hold that power. It's extremely gratifying. And then it also, I think, is empowering to be able to be like, you know what? No, like you're the one who has the issues here and you can keep doing whatever you're doing. It's not like it doesn't affect me. The only reason that it should in some way is if it impacts your day-to-day life again, which if you have children, it's a very different story. But I also think that, as children are getting older, they are perceptive, they do understand things. And my hope for you is that your children are able to understand that. It might come in waves and at times because there's, that influence of a parent and we all want to have closeness with our parents, I think, generally speaking. But your story matters. And I think, especially doing something like this podcast, Pete, like you're putting it out there. And for me, it was a very freeing thing to be able to have conversations like this, because not only does it make you feel seen, as you said in the beginning, I think it makes the case for like, I don't have a problem talking about this.
yeah,
This person, the person I was with could come back, say whatever they want to say about any of the shows that I've done where I've talked about my experience with her. You can lie about that. Go ahead, lie about it, because my truth is out here. It's being shared and I know I'm being honest. So I don't like whatever you say is irrelevant now, And
yeah.
so I think it's really great that you're doing this because I think podcasting for me was a massive healing function.
I love podcasting just because the people I get to meet every day is something new, and the show even shows it too from the beginning to where I'm now. You'll just see me the evolution of Pete happen because I start discovering who I really am. Like I still kind of wasn't sure really where I was going with in the beginning, and then it took off so fast as it did, and it just And in the beginning, I had a bunch of like oddball guests, and now I've refocused everything after meeting one person named Stephanie Acock. She's got a movie coming out called Bloom that's supposed to
Mhm.
basically change the way you look at mental awareness. She's in the funding stages of it though, but I met her early last year, and she had said something to me. She said, "Hey, listen, you should check out this thing." Just Daisy was trying to tell me maybe I should start looking at different paths to find different kind of guests than what I was having. And I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. And then I met somebody else that it does energy healing, so I got big into that too. So then it just seemed like the universe kept putting certain people in my path to have these discussions. And I talked a little bit about my narcissistic ex on one episode we were doing, and a lot of people said they couldn't make it through the whole thing. They had to stop because it was hitting so hard. And right there says that we're having the right conversation then, because if they're reacting to it, that's what we want. We want people to understand that they're not alone. But like 3 or 4 people are like, yeah, man, I went halfway through that conversation. I couldn't handle it anymore. You guys were just getting into it. And we were just going for an hour straight of just talking about narcissists alone. And I was
Yeah.
like, right there, it said, hey, I'm doing something right, because now these guys are reacting to what I'm saying, and it's great when people hear it, because people tell me all the time, well, I appreciate you do. All I'm doing is having a conversation with people. Now, I'm giving people a space to talk about it. I invite people to come on. I've heard some crazy ass stories on here.
Yeah. Well, something that you said though is like, I'm just having a conversation. Well, I think that's where it always starts. I
Yep.
think the path forward for ourselves, the path towards empathy is by having conversations with people who are like us and people who are not like us.
I think
And
it's having the tough conversations too,
mhm,
especially too, the ones that nobody really wants to talk about, like narcissists, suicide, things like all these other things that trigger people.
yeah,
Yes, it triggers you, but why does it trigger you is the real question. And then you deeper into why it is. And then you have other people coming out sharing these crazy stories of just things that you just like. I think the other day was somebody said they got in a couple gunfights as a kid and all this other stuff. She just kept unleashing all these new things. And it's great in conversation because as it goes, they start opening up and get warmer and warmer in the conversation. And
yeah,
it's like, it's great to watch them because you get to watch a lot of the guests evolve. Like the lady I did at Eat this morning, me and her were talking. At first, she was a little kind of standoffish. I was like, don't worry, I got you. Watch this. Like I said, I'm gonna get you to open up by the end of this conversation. And she just slowly to start getting bubbly and start revealing a lot of stuff about herself that I don't think she was meant to tell anybody, or she didn't really plan to talk about. But it was so interesting to see because you're having a conversation versus an actual interview. You're getting more organic answers from people, and you're getting more things to come out of them too. And they start sharing a lot more stuff about themselves, and it's great because you can watch them start opening up halfway through the conversation and things like that. And it's great to see because I tell everybody the same thing. It's like, if I didn't have such a good hold on how I do this, and I have such an ability to connect with people, like this show wouldn't go anywhere because like your conversation would be flat. But I have the uncanny ability to connect with people on a strange level. Somebody else pointed out to me that same fact that before I even started doing this. He's like, has anyone ever told you have this weird ability to connect to people? You don't have to know anything about these people, and you can connect them on such a personal level because you're so genuine about it. And I said, no, not really. I didn't really know. I said I'd just be me.
yeah. Well, I love that you said that too, because I see that, I witness that. It's hard when you're when you're meeting people and you're going to podcast with them. A lot of times, first of all, as a guest, it's super important to like look into the person if they're pitching you and be like, okay, like what's their vibe? Do I feel like I could have a good conversation
Yeah.
with them? And I really liked your energy. I love what you're doing. And I agree with what people are saying. I didn't really know what to expect in terms of how we were initially like immediately going to engage. It's like a first meeting with somebody, right? So there is a I don't know where we're gonna go. It just felt like we immediately fell into what was a natural conversation, and I appreciate that on multiple levels. One, because I'm experiencing it, I'm witness to it, and I agree with what everyone is saying. And on the flip side of that is that I've had people share that same feedback with me and coming on my show. And what has been so fulfilling for me are those moments that you just described, where somebody will say, "You know what? I've never shared this with anybody before." And I'm like, "Yes,
Here we
that's the
go.
one that
Right.
we want," right? And, I had read this book, I wanna say, I can't remember what it's called right now. But there was a book that spoke about how, it's The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. And she spoke about how, if you want people to meet you with vulnerability, that you have to come in with more vulnerability than you would like them to share. So I think that what you've done and what I did, and I don't know that either of us, based on what you're saying, intended for it to be this way, but how
Yeah.
we are inherently as people is I'm here, I'm real, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be vulnerable and you're welcome to meet me there, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think a lot of people come in walled and they're like, what's this about? Like you're a little suspect. You're like, I'm comfortable enough to share my story, but I've got talking points and I know where I'm going and this is how it's going to go. And you and I are just sort of like, no, like share what feels right to you right now, within the structure of what we're trying to do here, but
Right.
show up fully. That's what people want. And so I admire what you're doing. I think you're doing it quite well. And I think that is reflected in the feedback that you've gotten.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It feels great when people say that too. They're like, I appreciate, I admire everything you're doing. And I'm just like, I'm just having a conversation. And it's just like, I love engaging conversations. There's a lot of people I've gotten to conversations like, well, I talk neurodivergence. Okay. Trust me. I can keep up a lot of conversations. Let's be honest here. I'm ready to go. And we're just firing back and forth the whole time. And they're just like, I think a lot of them are impressed about how well I can keep up. I'm like, I know a lot of things, like, and I'm always interested to learn anything I can from people. And I know that's a lot of the comments, what they say. If you look at a lot of the reviews I get too, if that people are like, he's super engaged. And that's what a lot of people say too, is that you're always super engaged. I'm like, yeah, why not? You're here. You're taking your time to come on this show to show me something or teach me something new or come talk about what you're doing. Like, I'm going to be invested. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to ask you to be here just to be a total dickhead to you. There's no point.
Yeah. Well,
Like, what?
it's interesting though, is I think one of the things that shocked me about people's feedback, because it's so nice to receive the compliment. The fact that you were saying people say you're genuine. I got people are like, you're so authentic. Like you just like you are who you are. And I was like, well, yes, exactly. Shouldn't we all just be who we are? And I think that one of the things that's really interesting about it is that when you do that, like you are unlocking something for somebody else, you're giving them the opportunity to like reflect that. So in like the conversations that we were having with like our significant others holding a
Mhm.
mirror up to us, we get to be that for people in this moment. And I was surprised to hear from several guests that I had had how ill prepared and unengaged they felt other hosts were. And so I think
Yeah,
when you show up the way that you or I do, people are like, oh my gosh, breath of fresh air. You're like a real human being who cares about what I'm saying, not somebody
exactly.
who's like, and the next question is like, I have an intended structure in terms of the like, this is generally speaking the direction I'd like the conversation to go if we pre-established that, but I don't want to over architect it and then lose the plot because now we're just so focused on these minutia, these talking points that somebody might repeat on every other show. And so when I was kind of in the last season of my podcast, can I just say that we talked about earlier,
Yeah,
um I was really like, you know what? Um, I want to market it in a way where I'm telling people that when I'm speaking to guests, I want you to say the part that you feel doesn't get enough airtime. Talk about the
exactly.
thing that you want to talk about that like no other show is asking you to say. And you're not coming in with the pre scripted or prepared talking points. Like go to the place that you wanna go that you feel like is maybe a little off the map of what you typically talk about, and let's tap into that because everybody else has heard the other things that you've said on other shows
Yeah,
if they're
exactly.
following you.
And that's a great point too. And a lot of people ask me, so what should I expect? I said, just bring you to the party. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to highlight what you're doing. Like these people are doing certain things and say, you're taking the time to be here. Let's talk about what it is. Let's find out who you are. And it's fun when you dig deep with people because you just watch them start revealing things. And it's just like you read these profiles and nowhere in the profile are half of these things that are on here. I'm like, whoa, okay. This just
Yeah.
took a turn for the very interesting part.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
I had the number one I had a globally top rated podcast person. Her name's Hillary Russo. She came on, and nowhere in Hillary's bio did she say that she was a news anchor on the desk during 9/11 when the first plane hit. I
Oh
was
my
like, get the
gosh.
hell out of here, really? And it was Hillary's so cool to talk to, though. Even though she has all these credentials and things like that, it was so great to talk to her because she's just a real person at the end of the day. And that was too in the early on in the show. I had a Columbine survivor shooter come in, the shooting survivor that came in and didn't tell me that what the story was about to unfold. So we're sitting there and I'm talking to her, and this is audio, mind you. So I'm sitting there talking to her, and all of a sudden she's like, "Well, Pete, I'm in the library." I'm like, "Oh shit, we're in the library." Like your audio, you're hyper focused on everything going around you. Nothing else matters. We're in the library. I'm like, "Oh God." Okay, we're in the library. What are we doing right now? And it's like she's describing it like you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, man. You're like seeing it through her eyes. And she's like, "Well, I see the whites of the eyes of one of the shooters." I'm like, "What?" The fuck?
Oh my
What?
gosh, I just got
What?
goosebumps. Oh, that's
It was
terrifying.
it's on Spotify. I have it on the earlier half because I was hosting on another site, one called Podbean, when I
Yep.
was doing a lot of stuff originally. So then when I switched over to this one, so I know a lot of people get confused because now I have the new logo you see in the background, but my old logo is there. That one has the conversation because anybody hasn't seen it though or listened to it yet. It gets really interesting real fast because she's like,
Mm.
she describes that she's there, she sees them, what she sees is happening, and they're telling her to come out. And I'm like, oh God, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh God, don't get out. No, you're like that person in the theater yelling, don't get out, bitch, don't get
Yeah,
out.
totally, totally. Wow, what a trip. Yeah, I feel like that's something too, is that you just don't know what stories are gonna unfold for
Oh
people.
yeah.
And also I feel like, we don't always lead with that when we're, as a podcast guest. I think you're trying to summarize what you could talk about into a
Hmm.
handful of things, and realistically, there's sort of endless possibilities for where conversations can go. And if you tap into something, I mean, I just did an episode yesterday with a friend of mine, where it was the second time I was coming onto her show, Connection with Jewel. She is her business, but her podcast is called Socially Delightful, and it's basically helping people connect. She's an amazing human being, also great at connection. And we were talking about it going into it. We were originally planning on talking about queer friendships because we had tapped into that a little bit in a previous episode, and we ended up completely shifting gears once we started talking into something else because it just was the natural path of the conversation. And so
Yeah.
I think leaving space for the organic discussions is what gives you the best content, to your point.
Oh, I agree 100%. Let me tell you, had I known we were about to take an adventure together down where, hey Pete, where are we at right now? It's like,
Yeah.
there was another moment though in this show. Oh shit, moment that happened. I don't remember where it happens in the conversation. I had somebody else listen to it because I swear this person had said it. So I had a good friend of mine listen to the episode. So the setting is that this gentleman, he's doing this app for kids that help regulate their emotions. Okay, so 30 minutes or 40 minutes in the conversation, he says, "Hey Pete, can I tell you something?" And I'm like, oh God, here we go. What's going to happen? Is in my head as I'm thinking. Little did I know what this man was about to say was, hey, Pete, this morning I was sitting at the edge of my bed. I had it in my hand. I was ready to put it against and pull. I was like, huh? What did he say? I was like, what did he say? I was like, oh shit. And then he skips, comes back to the conversation. So I had somebody go back and listen. I said, listen, man, I don't think I can go through another run and listen to that. I need you to listen to this episode and they watch them. Go back and watch it real quick and tell me if he says that. He goes, oh yeah, he says it twice. In fact, he goes to it, he makes the comment and comes back to it again and starts talking about it full circle. And I'm just like, oh God. I was like, it was the oh shit moment. That's
Yeah,
why I
it's a
referred to it as the
sense.
oh shit moment because it's like, holy fuck, this guy's telling you this thing, man. And for him to start admitting this, we're live on the air. People are all seeing this and people are freaking out, going, oh God, is he okay? I'm like, yeah, he's fine now. I talk to him all the time. He's okay. But it was like for him to come out and have that conversation. It was so surreal that everybody's reaction is exactly what I expected to happen as people start freaking out because at least he's talking to you though.
Well, I
Like
think that's also the empathy from the people listening too, right? Is that it's scary
oh yeah,
because that's it's an extremely uh, uh, emotional place to be for the
right.
person who's experiencing it and for people who might be witness to that. And I think, like, it's important to talk about those things.
Hmm.
I think the fact that it was so fresh in that moment is probably the more alarming piece of it, right? Because you're like, okay, is he okay? But I think that's also a testament to the type of people that are listening, who are going, people's lives matter, and
Yeah,
let it, like, even if you
yeah,
don't know them. And I think right now we're at a point in time where we are seeing more and more people be able to sort of justify not caring about others because it doesn't affect them directly. And then you see other people who are like, who cares if it doesn't affect me directly, because I care about humanity and other people's lives and their well-being, because their well-being is our collective well-being. And it gets back to, like, everything that you're doing with this show, which is like,
yeah.
raise this to the surface, because if we're not talking about it and it's hiding in the shadows, then it is more dangerous there. And so to shed light on it and give space to it and allow it to breathe, even if it feels scary at that time, is something that we have to be doing to heal through.
Yeah. Well, you could tell though in the beginning he was a little off about something was bothering him, and then he started talking about his friend who had actually committed suicide a few months before he even did the interview with me. He said, I just lost my friend, and then he goes away from it, and then that's when he drops that bomb, and I'm just like, here we go. He said it, and I was just like, I remained calm the whole time. and then he
Yeah.
was upset a little bit. So I was soothing him. I was like, hey man, I'm so sorry, and things. And I was keeping it together the whole time, but in my head, I'm freaking out because it's like, oh God, what is going on? Is this guy going to do something crazy here? Because you don't know what they're going to do next. And that was
Yeah,
my biggest
and you
fear.
don't wanna feel like you couldn't have done something
Yeah.
either. I think that's, like, a scary part of it. Something I wanted to note, and this is, like, not meant to be critical, it's more to be informative to anybody who's listening. I have a friend who has a podcast, the Survivors Podcast. She also has a business called The Help Hub. Her name's Lisa Sugarman, and she is, a suicide loss survivor and has great insights for anybody who needs resources for mental health. She's also a crisis
Definitely.
counselor with the Trevor Project, but I mention that because the phrase committed suicide is, I believe, not the preferred way to refer to it because committed sort of makes it sound as if it's a crime. So I believe the way people are referring to it more is died by suicide.
Oh, okay.
Just as an FYI, I could be wrong. There might be a better way to say that even, but I just so people know, to help kind of destigmatize it. That way, it's not sort of this criminal sort of
Yeah.
act in that way. So I hope that's okay that I mentioned that.
No, I thought that's great. That's an awesome point to know because that'll be something to look into to see. That way we're using the proper terminology for these things because I want to be correct when I'm talking about them. So if there's something that we should be saying versus what we're saying now, I'm down for it 100%. I think it's great. I'll have to reach out to her though too because I am trying to put together a panel about that subject alone.
Oh,
But
I'll connect you too. She's just
yeah,
like one of my favorite humans. She's somebody who you're like you meet somebody and I did intro calls for all my shows. So I was basically like 2 seconds into the conversation, it just feels like a kindred spirit. I mean, even just the way you and I hopped on and started
mhm.
engaging immediately, I'm like, yes, this is the vibe. So
Listen,
I'll happy to connect you
I'm
too.
not gonna lie to you though. I was listening to your some of your stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a great conversation." I feel
Oh, I
this
love
is
that.
how how you guys were having a conversation. And you and Nikki were having the conversation. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be great." Because I go look at what people are doing and listen to what they're doing, and like I
Same.
have this ability where I can tell like I already have a good feeling like this is a great conversation. Just like the woman this morning, like I didn't know what it was about her, but I'm like, I gotta have her on here for some reason. And then it turned into such a great conversation. And then you see her open up and say these things. And it's always how I go and I book people now is like I'm looking at it like, am I feeling this? And if there's a strange attraction to why it seemed like I just can't say no to this person, it means that obviously we're about to have a very interesting conversation about something. And that's happened more times than others now. And it's a reoccurring thing that continues to happen too. So I love it. It's great
Yeah,
because
you can trust that vibe.
definitely, and 100% is what it is, and somebody's like, "Just keep following your instincts," and that's how I connect to so many different people and all these other podcasters I'm friends with, and I think the other day was funny though too. Somebody mentioned my name, and I was like listening to it repeatedly. This was funny because I told somebody this morning, I was like, "Yeah, I was listening to myself get mentioned for like 10 minutes straight, just kept repeating that 2 minutes, Because I'm like, I had to get a surreal check to make sure they're talking about me and not some other Pete, and it was so real because she's like, "Oh, hey, do you know Pete?" I'm like, are they talking about me? She's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
The two people having a conversation didn't realize that I had been on one of their podcasts and the other one had interviewed. They were like, oh yeah, he interviewed me on his show. And it's like, oh yeah, I had him on my show. I was like, oh, they are talking about me. Never mind.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, what's funny too is so when my wife and I met, we met online, and we were just friends for a little bit first, but she actually had listened to my podcast. It was the first couple seasons at the time, prior to us even really connecting and talking more. So she had a moment where she was just like, "Oh, I like really want to know you." And so I've
Yeah.
joked around that I'm like, if I started my podcast for no other reason than for her to be like, "I want to know you," I feel good about it, right? So it's like listenership aside, I got the one listener I needed to hear it.
Right. And I always tell people that you touch one person's heart, that's it. You've done enough. And a lot of people that see this are inspired to come on and talk about their own stuff. And everybody always asks me, what should I talk about you? I mean, that's the whole point. You're here to share whatever you want to share, little, a lot, whatever you want, and that's the great thing about it is it's just authentic. It's just, I'm here for you guys. You guys want to come here and share your stories? Let me know, reach out. That's what I tell everybody, reach out. Let me know. I'll figure it out. Let me know give me a little backstory so I know what I'm working with. So I have a little
Yeah.
time to prepare, things like that. As much information as you can give me. Like I won't reveal it. I'll know what a lot of the story is here, but I'm not telling them that. I'm like, yo, I know this, but it's better coming from the other person's words, and things like that too. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a great conversation. I really wasn't sure where we were going to go with this today, and it was really healing to be able to talk through a lot of this. Like I
Well,
said, it was very top of mind exiting that relationship, and you'd made a comment about like I don't know if it was the universe. I'm definitely somebody who I believe in divine timing. I
hmm
feel like after losing my mom and going through that really bad relationship, I just was craving some sort of understanding. And so I started listening to like a lot of philosophy around Zen Buddhism. I'm not a religious person.
no,
And
I
so
get that.
Alan Watts and Pema Chodron are like two people whose audiobooks and lectures and things like that I'd listened to a lot. And it just helped really ground me in a state of understanding and peace and acceptance without sort of dismissing it. And being able to come around to that and this idea of, I do believe that there is more oneness. And I feel like there's so much that connects us. And having these conversations with people like yourself are not only important for those listening, but I really feel deeply that they're very healing and important for us on the mics.
Yeah, definitely. Because they say writing it down helps as well. It's basically the same thing. If you're on here telling people your story, you're basically essentially doing the same thing, and letting people know that they're not alone is a big thing too. Because a lot of times that's a lot what you hear. It's like, well, I feel alone, or nobody else understands. Well, a lot of people understand. You just have to know where to find them.
Mm,
And the universe speaks to you more than you realize. Whether it's God or whatever you believe in is talking to you
yeah.
and telling you that there's a reason. And like I said, though, like I attract these people to me. And a lot of the people I booked for the show, I think I've only had two bad apples out of the bunch, but it turned out that everybody had bad experience with them. So it
Yeah.
wasn't anything new. So I was like, okay, well, I was right not to proceed with this because it didn't fit what I'm doing. Everybody's like, oh, I want to be on your show for this and that. Okay, so and it's like everybody says that, oh, well, hey, when's my time? And like those are the people, let me tell you, they get put at the bottom of the list of priority. Well, when you demand and tell me, hey, book me something. No, that's not it. You're an adult. You can go to the calendar, pick what time you want to be here. And if you decide to show up, that's on you. If not, I'm not going to waste my energy and worry about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of conversations I had early on, I wasn't sure how people felt about it. And then, they start leaving comments and things. And I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. And it went better than I thought it did. And I started slowly learning all that stuff too. And I feel like, the energy I give out is what's bringing all these people in. And like I said, I listen
For
to
sure.
your and your better half's conversations. I just let them run in my headphones as I was working on setting up for this. And I was instantly like, yeah, oh yeah, this is gonna be an awesome conversation. Just the way you approach things, I was just like, hell yeah, I like the way you handle things, the way you conversate with things, and you could tell a lot about a people based on the way they start having a discussion with other people. Because it's like, okay, well, yeah, and I can hang in a lot of conversations. A lot of people are like, oh well, I talk about these things. Let me tell you, I'll surprise you how much things I can hang in for. And a lot of them are like, I was
Yeah.
so shocked at how much he actually. Listen, I know a lot more than people realize they do. Let me give me a little credit here. I may not be an expert in any of these things, but I do a little research, so I'm a little understanding of what's going on ahead of time. And fun fact, I prepare like an hour before most of these interviews too. So that's what a lot of time I spend.
Yeah.
I
Well, I love that too because I think that a lot of people also just sort of go in with intention, just sort of to get the interview on the books and kind of move on from it. And so I do
yeah,
really appreciate that you listened and got a sense of what we're doing. Healthy love is something that we both have been so passionate about for so long. And like I said, we're kind of slow dripping it right now, just purely from a bandwidth perspective, but we have
yeah,
so much content backlogged. We have tons of conversations that are yet to be recorded. We have some expert guests that we're going to be bringing on. And it's, right now it's the passion project, but we have a much bigger vision for it. And I really believe that together with my partner Nicole and just sort of gathering community around that we're going to be able to help people understand the types of relationships that they deserve. And it really does start with self-love and understanding where you're coming from and being able to then reflect that in your relationships, which I think is really like a wonderful way to go from where we started the conversation in our past relationships and land here where we're both able to speak about the good relationships we're in now,
yeah.
and how we got there because of improving the relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, and like I told you before you started recording, me and my wife were thinking about doing something similar to that. She was like, she's never really been into being on the internet, so it's still kind of new to her. For her to say, "Hey, well, we should have a show where just the two of us have a conversation," or invite a couple other couples in and have a couple topics and just see how everybody responds to it as a couple, and it'd be an interesting perspective to that. And I was like, yeah, so I sent her your YouTube page of you guys, and I was like, yeah, here, what do you think about this? check it out when you get a second, So we'll see if she actually reads the message. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't.
Well, I get that though. I get that. I'm like, I will at the end of the day be like, did you see this message I sent you at like 8 hours ago? No, we work in the same house, and we could easily miss that stuff. But I am excited to have more people listening and hopefully connecting with that type of conversation. And I'd love to hear what your wife thinks of it if she has a chance to listen.
Yeah, I would definitely let you know for sure because I'm interested to see what she says too. Because I'm like, what do you think about this kind of like thing? Maybe just the two of us getting in here and just going for it and just having a straight back and forth conversation about just whatever topic we pick. And it was her idea originally to do it because she's so a little shy about being online, but she's getting more used to it, like TikTok lives and things like that. She was like,
Yeah,
telling me the
yeah.
other day, oh hey, and everything else like that, it's just like she's like, well, she's so used to it. She's like the other day, she was like, oh, we should go live on TikTok. We can hang out
Yeah,
in your
that's how we
studio.
start. That's how we started doing more of our conversations. Was probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago now. We were doing more and more TikTok lives because we had like just created some stupid videos that ended up going viral, which was cool that we created an audience. But we were like, what do we do with this? And so we did just start having the conversations, and the people who were kind of consistently there were ones who were interested in the dialogues that we were having around relationships, around things that are going on in the world, and really just being upfront about it. And I swear the greatest compliment that we got was from somebody commenting that we seem like the type of people that would pick you up at an airport. And I was like, that's so nice. Like, yes, we would pick you up at an airport. So I think that taps back into you're a genuine person, you're authentic, right? It's like, if you show up the way that you are, people will resonate with that. I think it's hard sometimes to release the self-doubt because there's so many people doing different types of things. You just have to do what feels right to you. And
Yeah.
something that my wife often says is, if you'll know that it's the thing for you if it feels right and good and safe and true. And I think that like it seems like that's what this podcast is for you. That's what mine has been for me over the years, and that can adapt over time. But I think these conversations, as long as you can keep them going, they'll continue to provide value.
Oh, there's plenty of people. Trust me, we already discussed that. There's plenty of people. Like, and
Yeah.
I go on Facebook all the time and open it up to them and just see what people have. And I pulled a couple people that were just amazing conversations, and it just that way it did it too. Just like your wife says, I had a feeling about them. I was looking into a little bit about them. I was like, I don't know what it's about them. I got to talk to this person, and I feel like that's what it is. That's how I do my booking now. It's like
Yeah.
I'll go through some of the people I booked. If if I have for some reason I don't feel like I'm not feeling their energy that's giving off when I'm reading their name and looking them up, I'll tell people respectively, I'm sorry, you're just not fitting into the
Yep.
parameters that we're doing, and I'll find somebody else to put in the spot, because there's a lot of people that want to be a part of the conversation, and a lot of people don't have a space to talk about it. People get on TikTok, but are they really heard? A lot of times, no, because some of my videos only get like 100 something views, and things like that. Well, okay, that's fine. I'll keep hitting
Totally.
different mediums. So, but I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on everything just to see what sticks. And then whatever sticks, I stay with. Everything else, I'm just kind of like, all right, well, cool. I guess that's not my audience there, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. I totally understand. I think you just have to find, like the people that are for you will find you is part of it. I apologize. I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to jump
Well, no,
to another meeting very shortly. I know
okay,
we're
we'll
on a
wrap it
live,
up.
so I apologize for that.
No, you're good. We were getting ready to
Um,
wrap up anyways. I'm about to wrap up anyways. Usually keep it about an hour anyways, but we were just having such a great
yeah, no, I
conversation.
love a good riff, and I didn't want to interrupt it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be accountable for this in a second.
No, you're okay. Well, okay. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you? Obviously, your podcast. You guys are on YouTube, right? Is there an audio side for
Yeah.
the?
Yes. So we don't have the audio side up yet. We really just wanted to launch into YouTube and kind of get a feel for it. And plus, just
Mhm.
from an algorithmic perspective, I think it's good to kind of suss out who our audience is. So you can find our podcast on YouTube. The channel is This Is Healthy Love. And my wife, Nicole, and I are just absolutely having a blast doing this. We have much more content to come, and I highly encourage people to check that out. And if you are somebody who is looking to be a podcast guest, I also have a
Oh yeah,
business
I'm
that I
down.
launched a couple months ago, personalizedpodcastservices.com. And you can check out what I offer there. And
Yes, yeah.
Pete,
Send me the information for sure. I'm
yeah.
down. Yeah, send me.
And
I
Pete, I
love
would
being a
love to,
guest.
and I would love to stay in touch. And I want to definitely
Definitely.
connect with you connect you with some of the people that I just mentioned.
Definitely, for sure. Awesome. I am totally down for it 100%. So let's close this out, guys. I'm Pete versus Anxiety. You know where to find me. I'm on X all the way down to TikTok. I'm always Spotify down to iHeartRadio, guys. And as I always say, it costs nothing. Absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete versus Anxiety, signing off saying, hey, don't ask how your day is today. Ask, hey, how's your mental health?